Hello everyone, my name is Dan from Baltic and today we're going to talk about HTML and HTML5. We'll first start off explaining what HTML is, what it looks like and how it can be used in development. Following that we'll look into different tags which can be used, more on tags later, and then finally cover HTML5 which is the latest version of the markup language. As this is a short video, we'll not have the option to cover everything related to HTML. However, I'll provide some resource websites to bulk out your knowledge on this subject at the end of this video. So, as you can see here, we've got our agenda for the video. So, first of all, we're going to be starting off with the overview of the language. What does it look like and how can it be used? The tags of HTML, HTML5, a quick introduction into the latest version, and then finally, resources for future development. Without further ado, let's make a start. So the first one is overview of the language. So I purposely put together 3 of the main languages for web development. So the 3 main languages of which you need to know for web development are HTML, CSS and JavaScript. There are other web languages involved such as PHP and MySQL. However, we'll focus on the main 3. And for this video, I'm going to be focusing on the HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language and it's the standard markup language for creating web pages and web applications. I like to think of the HTML as the skeleton of the website. It's the foundations, and without HTML you don't have a website. We'll cover the last 2 languages in other videos more specified and more specific to them. So please note that HTML and CSS are not programming languages in themselves. HTML is a markup language and has set tags. When we talk about tags, we could also use the term element as well, more on that later in the video. JavaScript out of the 3 is the only programming language, and again, more on that within another video. The 3 technologies I've just discussed are very much client side. So if you talk about server side languages, you'd look into things such as MySQL, PHP, C# and many more. It's basically what the user doesn't see happening if you're talking about server side. We're talking about client side for these 3 main languages, so that's what the user gets to see. It's what runs on the browser for the user. So to build a website, we may use a text editor such as Sublime, Brackets, or even just Notepad. You must ensure that the document is saved as HTML or .htm. Your first page is always going to be called the index.html or .htm. There are a few other options, however this is the main practice to follow. You may also come across the term IDE, and this stands for an integrated development environment. It allows you to test your code offline in a bubble, so to speak, and to check it for bugs before going live. Visual Studio is a very popular IDE for development because it is free to download and it's very powerful in regards to the equipment and tools that you're provided with. So let's move on to the next slide, which will look into what does it look like and how can it be used. So this is a bit of code that I wrote up on the left hand side, and on the right hand side this is the output. This is what we're physically provided with. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, you cannot have a website without HTML. It's the foundations of the web page and the structure of which everything else will follow. You may work with a CMS, a content management system such as WordPress, Drupal, Joomla or Wix for example. If you look into the code, it will show PHP, which is another language as I mentioned before. All you need to know is that the content management system will change the HTML and convert it to PHP for you. So no matter what, HTML is needed for a basic website. HTML works off the basis of tags. The tags instruct the browser what to display to the user. Think of it a bit like a recipe. It will work its way down the code, providing the website some instructions of what to display. If you do not have tags, you won't have any content. So the tag must be opened and closed. You can see how we open and close the tags within this image. So I've used the main starter tags for a web page. We're going to cover others later in this video. So I've created this code within a Notepad document and saved it as index.html. So as I mentioned, the code that I wrote is on the left hand side and the output is on the right hand side. As HTML is the structure of the web page, it will look very basic, pretty much like a Wikipedia page. There are many things we can do with HTML. For example, we can create forms, buttons, link images, videos, and also work with a bit of SEO. And that stands for search engine optimization. So SEO is basically the technique to get onto the first page of the browser to enable more credibility to the brand and traffic to the website, ultimately resulting in more sales, ideally. So let's have a little breakdown of our code that you can see on here. So we started off with the doc type HTML. Now that is needed to indicate that is a HTML document. The next thing we have are the HTML tags, and every tag that has been opened will also need closing in the basics of HTML. So everything within this container, as you can see here, is within the body. We have content within the body. We have the head, open and close, and you may notice there's only a slight difference between opening a tag and closing a tag. The only difference is the slash there that you can see. So we've opened the HTML on line 2, we've then closed it on 24. We've opened the body on line 27, we've then closed the body on line 23. We've opened the head on line 3 and closed it on line 5. We've opened the title and closed the title on exactly the same line. So the title, that is this section here, so you will see that just above the URL bar. So you can see there, Baltic training be the future, and that's exactly what it is there. If we wanted to add some more imagery, we may add a favicon or a favicon, depending on the pronunciation you wish to adapt to, but we could add image there as well. We've got a H1 tag, so that is a heading tag. So the H tags go between 1 and to number 6. So number 1 is the biggest heading that you will get, number 6 is the smallest. I've added a slightly smaller heading under here, the H2, but I've also added strong as well, which then initiates that it's a bit of style in there. Very, very basic styling at that, but it's added bold in regards to the writing. I've then added an OL tag, which stands for an ordered list. So you can see there, 1, 2, and 3. You can see the LI tag following that, which stands for a list item. So you can see there I've got tags in there. I've added another strong tag to make that bold. And then resources for future development, I've just left that as the same as the option on line 14. I've then added an image, so we've got the source there of Baltic logo RB, and then I've also got an alt tag as well. So an alt tag is basically if your image does not load. So if this image didn't load, it will give me this information here. It will tell me what it is. Now that can be used for people with text-to-speech readers. It can be used to benefit SEO purposes, and it can just be used again if the image doesn't load, if it's failed to find the location. And then the last bit of code that I've got on there is a link to a website. So you can see here an anchor, which we're going to cover that in a few minutes time, but we've got href, and we've got the website that will take us to baltictraining.com, and we've got the link text that we want us to take us to baltictraining.com, and you can see it there. If I didn't have the line break in there, this click here would just be to the right hand side of the image. So we're going to be working with sort of break tags and paragraph tags in order to do basic formatting for our web page, because even just clicking enter on this document would not make the text move any further down. We need to initiate it and again make it follow a recipe of exactly what it needs to do. So that's what HTML looks like. That is a very, very basic page that I created on Notepad and then transferred it over into Sublime, for example, and then made a note of the reference lines just for support for those that are wanting to maybe use a bit of this code to get going. It's very, very quick to create a basic web page, and it's quite satisfying as well. So let's have a quick look at the tags for HTML. There are absolutely hundreds of tags that you could use for HTML. We're only going to cover the main ones. So without going into too much detail, on this slide and the next slide, I would say are the main tags to use within a web page. So you may hear the term tags and elements. There's a slight difference between the two. So a HTML tag is just an opening or a closing entity. So for example, paragraph or break, for example. So if we jump back to the previous slide, you can see there that just a normal tag would be that there, so the break within there. A HTML element encompasses an opening tag and a closing tag, and it also has content within it as well. So we can maybe do the title, for example. That could be a semantic tag. So we know that it's the title, we've opened and closed it, and we also have information within there. So the complete phrase is there called an element. So a tag on its own hasn't got any content, an element has some content to go with it. So you can see there a href, and then we can put in our URL there. That's generally used to anchor a URL to text or an image. We've got B, so that applies boldface to text. We've got the image, so that inserts an image from a file or another website, so you can link it externally as well via a URL. We've got the P tag, so that defines a text as a paragraph. The pre, so text with a fixed width font, it defines pre-formatted text. We've got the time, so that displays time and can be useful for blogs and for SEO. That sort of links a bit more onto the HTML5 side of things, more on that later. And we've got the mark tag, so that highlights text on the page, possibly an offer on something that you're trying to sell at a business. Again, a bit more of a HTML5 tag. And we've got comment as well, right at the bottom. So your writing would go in between here, so in between this tag here, and this will be displayed on the website. It's purely used for the developer. It is very, very rare that a software application is maintained and developed by the same person along its lifespan. So what you would do is you would put comments within your code to allow future developers, possibly trainees at the business, to know exactly what your thought process is. What were you trying to do within this code? It could even be used for debugging as well. People can debug in a couple of seconds flat. If you give them some comments to say what you were trying to do, it makes it much easier for them to follow. And we'll move on to the next slide, which is a few more tags that are definitely used within HTML. So you can see here a few of which I mentioned earlier on, but we have the OL tag, which stands for an ordered list. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it has numbers on there. We then have UL, which is an unordered list. So this will follow the form of a bullet point in the grand scheme of things. We've got the EM, so this will emphasize the content to show it is important. So it may have some italics attached to the styling of the writing that you've got there. We've got a div, so a container for a block of content. That was previously always used for the structure of a website. Since we moved into HTML5, we now no longer need as many divs. We do still need them nonetheless, but not as many as what we previously needed. We've then got a BR, which is a line break within the content. Notice we had that within our code earlier on in the video. We have the H1 tag, which is the largest heading, and we have a H6 tag, which is the smallest heading. We can go anywhere in between that, H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's basically for the formatting of the web page and can very basic have an impact on SEO, but very, very slightly. It's mainly for the formatting for the user to make it a bit nicer to view. So the next slide is a bit of a greyed area. It covers a bit of HTML5 and also tags as well, because they are very, very much linked together. So we've got a HTML that identifies the page as a HTML document. So we notice that right at the top with the doc type HTML, that again identifies the page as a HTML document. We've got the head, so that contains markup and code used by the browser, such as scripts that add interactivity and keywords to help search engines find the page. So they come in the form of metadata, and that goes within the head section. Again, we showed you earlier on in the code. We've then got the title, so that displays the title of the web page, which appears at the top of the web browser, usually on the Pages tab in a tabbed browser. We've then got the body, so that surrounds the content that's visible on the web page when viewed in a web browser. So again, the body is probably the bulk of what you're going to be getting for a web page. So there are many tags which are used in HTML, of which we've just covered. I would say the tags on the screen are the most important, the one that we have on the screen at this moment in time. So a website is created within a container. The container will have the HTML head, title and body tag. You can also have the nav and footer tags, which we can see here. And they stand for the navigation and the content at the bottom of the page. So you may have copyright, further links, or even breadcrumbs or bread trails as well, in regards to where you need to go to, where you've come from, potentially. This type of content does venture again slightly into HTML5 and semantic tags. However, going forward, all HTML documents will look like this. This will be the general structure of it. So we have a few other options that I didn't mention. So we have the section within here, and also an article, and also an aside. So within the section, so this element defines a section within a document. Within the article, that specifies an independent, self-contained content. So that could be used for a forum post, a blog post, or even a newspaper article. And then finally, we have the aside element, and that defines some content aside from the content it is placed in. So a bit like a sidebar in the grand scheme of things. So you can see here, this is the basic format of a HTML5 document. we're going to talk about what HTML5 is on the next couple of slides. But ultimately, this is the format that you would flow, and as you can see, you could link it to the code that we mentioned earlier on in the video. So next one is section 4. So we're now fully talking about HTML5. HTML5 is the newest version of the markup language. It's the newest version and it comes with newer features and technologies. It's supported in all up-to-date browsers, so anything above IE version 9, for example, and most, Chrome, IE, Safari, Firefox, for example, it's all supported within the newest versions of them. It makes use of semantic tags. So when we're talking about semantic tags or elements, it's basically elements or tags with meaning. So this is now more prominent in HTML5. We now have meaning behind things. So examples of non-semantic tags or elements could be div, could be span, for example. It doesn't tell us anything about its content, whereas semantic elements could be in the space of form, table, or article. It clearly defines its content of which it is. It makes it much easier to follow. We have new graphic elements, and we also have integrated multimedia elements as well. So we have the attributes of form elements. So we can have number, date, time, calendar, and range. We then have graphic elements such as SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphic, and also canvas as well, which is again two forms of images that you can look into a bit further. But it now allows us to implement that. And multimedia elements, we can now have audio and video tags within there. We can now make it a bit more purposeful. We can now integrate it much easier. So you can see there HTML5, coming back onto the late, early 2000s, close to 2010 is when it started to gain traction. So it started off in 1989 with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web. It's then implemented and grown from there, from the versions of 1, 2, 3, 4, and now on to 5. So before there, you can see W3C. They stand for the World Wide Web Consortium, and they are the validators of HTML. So you can see there 2014 and 2016, then now, it's now the recommendation. So it's HTML 5.1, so it's getting even further as technology progresses. So some features of HTML5. It has many features. I've mentioned a few as well. But HTML5 allows you to do things of what previous versions you simply could not do. So prior to HTML5, video and audio files could only be played in a browser with the use of a plugin like Flash, for example. So some of the main features of HTML5 include audio and video tags. So it embeds audio and video multimedia using the HTML5 markup tags audio and video. Canvas, so an HTML element that creates a container for graphics and also uses JavaScript to draw the graphics as needed. More on JavaScript in a different video. We can now have media queries, so a CSS3 feature that detects the user's type of screen size and the output accordingly. So CSS will work hand in hand with HTML, and we will cover that within the next video. But ultimately, it looks into mobile optimization. If the screen is smaller, if it's larger, it will shrink or stretch the content appropriately to what is needed. We have new application programming interfaces, which is APIs. APIs is application programming interfaces. And this gives apps access to resources such as files and webcams, so it allows us to do much more with the user. And then finally, geolocation. So that uses a bit of JavaScript as well as HTML5 to detect the location, so the geographic positioning of a client device. So whether it's on a Windows phone, an Android phone, or even a PC as well, it allows for geolocation. It allows you to find, restaurants close by to you, for example. It has that implementation to make it easier, not only for the user, but also for the web developer, in order to track people and in order to provide a better experience for people overall. We have a few more attributes as well of what we could see within HTML5. So we have the autofocus. So this will focus on a certain location once the form is loaded. So you can see there the colour around the box, it indicates that's the focus for it. We have a placeholder, so that displays text within the input field when empty. So you can see there, if that's empty, we know we need to put in our first name and also our last name within there. And finally, the required or email attribute. And that shows which field is required and indicates that an email format is needed. So if you add in an email address and forget to put @domain.com, it will flag you and say, no, we need this to be in an email format, otherwise it can't be submitted. That has a bit of validation behind what you're going to be doing, and again, may reduce the amount of spam, may reduce the amount of errors within people completing contact forms. So that is us through HTML and HTML5. As I mentioned, it is just a quick tour of HTML and HTML5 of what it is. If you are wanting to find out a bit more information, we do have some resources for future developments, and there are many useful resources which you can use alongside this video to improve your knowledge around HTML. So on the screen you can find a few useful resources which are very detailed on this subject. So I personally recommend W3 Schools and Solo Learn, as they allow you to test code, and it also has a factor of gamification as well within the content. It allows you to get rewards and also print things off to show how well you've been doing. But for me, some very good websites that you can use are W3 Schools, Udemy, Khan Academy, Solo Learn, Codecademy, Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is one of the biggest forums in the world, and if you have a development question or if your code isn't working, chances are the answer will be on this website. There's also a video here. Go into YouTube and it links to a bit of HTML and CSS. It's quite an in-depth video, and again bolts out much more than what we've discussed today, but today we've just went through an overview of the markup language. So that gets us on to the last slide. My name is Dan and you've been watching the video What is HTML? Thank you very much for watching. Take care and we will see you later.